Welcome to Real Agriculture. I'm Bernard Tobin. Today we're going to talk about manure management, and to get some expert insights, I'm joined by Christine Brown. She's a field crop sustainability specialist at Omafra. Hi Christine, how's it going?
Very good, thank you.
Hey, it's great to have you on. Now Christine, there's been so much discussion in recent years on how to manage nutrients, how to best manage everything from nitrogen and of course, keeping phosphorus in fields and out of the lakes. Managing livestock manure is a big piece of that puzzle. And you have a really neat concept, something that you call nutrient management, neighborhood nutrient management plans. Tell us about the idea.
It's not a new idea of sharing manure between neighbors, but I think with that threat of regulations against manure management or manure application in winter and potentially regulating how much phosphorus can go on and all those kind of threats that you hear in the background, we can look at management planning and say, hey, where's the carrot? Can we take manure from areas that have high fertility to areas that have low fertility and get paid for it? And so it's maybe just looking at nutrient management planning with an economic alternative.
And you talk about the neighborhood. How does the neighborhood concept come in here, or the community concept?
So I look at the neighborhood I live in, and there are livestock farms that have been there for generations in some cases. And so in most cases, if we did some soil testing in those fields, we would find that around the manure storages, the soil fertility levels are generally pretty high. And then you go to the field crop neighbors who don't have access to livestock manure, and in some cases, the fertility levels in those fields are relatively low. And so then the idea comes, well, instead of continuing to apply manure to these high fertility fields and really not seeing a payback on the phosphorus and the potash for years as the soil test gets drawn down, maybe if we sell that manure to the field crop neighbors for the same price as the available nutrients they would apply through commercial fertilizer, then it's a win-win on both sides.
Now, you've done some math here, Christine, and you talked about applying manure on low fertility fields versus high fertility fields. I mean, depending on where you put it, what's the value you can realize for your manure? As I say, if you're going low fertility versus high fertility.
Yeah, and that's a good question, because there's going to be a big difference in livestock type, and you've got some manure types that have more concentrated nutrients and some that have less concentrated nutrients. But if we'll take a high concentrated. If we take liquid finisher hog manure, for example, it has an average dry matter of somewhere in that 5%. It's got available nutrients, about 33 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 gallons, 28 pounds of phosphorus, and then about the same of potash. And so if you put that on a field that already has high fertility levels, and you take an average 1.5 cent per gallon application cost, then after application, you're left with basically just the value of the available nitrogen, because the phosphorus and the potash, there's already enough there. So you're just really adding to the soil bank. But if you put that, and so it would be worth somewhere under $10 per acre, applied at about 5,000 gallons per acre. You take that same manure to a low testing field, and so by low testing I mean under 15 parts per million phosphorus and under 100 for potash, and then all of a sudden that manure, instead of being worth $6 per acre, it's worth about $120 per acre.
Wow, great!
And so if the farmer with the livestock sees that cash up front, and then somebody's going to say, well, what's in it for the field crop person? But they have to buy the nutrients anyway through commercial fertilizer, and this way there would be the benefit of some micronutrients like sulfur and zinc, manganese, calcium, and the micronutrients, but there would also be the organic matter benefit.
Yeah, the OM for sure. Hey, what?
Yeah. And that's going to vary. That's going to vary depending on what kind of livestock type you've got.
Yeah, of course. Now, you say you can also target different types of manure to different crops. For example, putting watery manure with less nutrients on forage is a good example.
Yeah. So that one's a little bit more difficult because with your really high watery manure, you don't have the nutrient value. But if you've got a hayfield and if you've got drought type conditions, then that water might have as much value as the phosphorus and the potash and the nitrogen. And so targeting some of those nutrients onto the forage fields. And so then if you've got a neighborhood, so let's say a county block as an example, you might have a number of livestock farms, a number of field crop farms, and you might have some storages that are closer to a forage field, or you've got some wheat fields in that block. And then after wheat harvest, you can put some of these nutrients on. So it looks at what is the distribution of the crops and which crops are closest to the type of manure you're looking at. And this isn't going to work in every single neighborhood, but it's an idea at least that we can start considering.
Now, from your perspective, how much manure would be available for a program like this? I guess the question I have is, how much manure needs a better home in the province?
That is a very good question, and I don't have an exact answer. I suspect that there's a lot of livestock farms that has enough land base that maybe the target of this kind of a project would be taking it to some of their farther away fields and doing the planning based on, I might have a wheat crop on this field. I'm going to take the time to take that manure to that field with cover crops. So in some cases, it's going to be just doing a better job of planning on the acreage that's already there. In some cases, it may mean trading with neighbors and saying, well, my rented field is too far away, or the other field I own is too far away, but I can trade with this neighbor, and then we can do some trading to maximize or minimize the transportation costs by maximizing the nutrients.
Right. Now, hey, let's talk about what this program could look like. Do you need testing standards? Who would administrate a plan? What do you need to consider?
And I think this is the reason that it hasn't worked in the past. Farmers are really, really busy. But now that we're seeing a lot more nutrient management planners for the regulatory plans, but also for voluntary plans, and we're seeing a lot more interest for our nutrient stewardship on the retail scale, then there's the potential here to say, okay, a neighborhood would hire a 4R consultant, just for a fancy name, but a consultant that works with both the livestock and cash crop farms in a neighborhood, does the paperwork, because I think that's the part that's always been missing, the paperwork, the organizing. Does the paperwork with maps, what's the crop rotation, what are the potential application schedules, what is the manure analysis, what are the soil tests, coordinating all that information with the rotation, with the schedules. And I think that would be the key to make it work.
What about value here, Christine? I'm assuming you're going to have to assign value based on nutrient content and build some kind of credit financial exchange system. How do you see that working? A big question.
Yeah, and that's an excellent question. And there's going to be all kinds of variables for that one. There might be some might be done with trading straw. But paying for the consultant, I think initially that might be a pilot where you take some, I'm assuming here that there might be some funding for new ideas on nutrient management and cover crops and all that kind of stuff. There might be an opportunity to say, okay, can we get a grant or a pilot where we try this? And what is the economic value for both the farm and the livestock farm and the field crop farm, and is there enough where everybody pays a little bit of a share to make it happen. And that's the big question, right? That's why we would need to do this on a pilot scale first.
Now, I guess my final question for you is that, where is it right now? And I'm assuming as you've had discussions with your colleagues at OMAFRA, I can see this idea being, of interest to the Environment Ministry. Down the road, can a program be realized here?
I think yes. There's so many. When we're looking at policies that are looking at Great Lakes phosphorus, and you've got other policies looking at climate change and carbon sequestration and limiting the amount of nitrogen, and then you're looking at soil health. So you've got a bunch of policies, and then you've also got the organics being diverted from landfill. So all of these are looking at better use of nutrients. Mm-hmm. And with the Great Lakes phosphorus and with greenhouse gas emissions, nitrogen would be the big one there. So if you're looking at, okay, how can we maximize those two nutrients in particular? And a lot of that means more in-crop application or just ahead of crop utilization or the use of cover crops. And if we're going to maximize our storages and we're going to maximize nutrients and hopefully new technology with some of the equipment that's becoming available, then this might be the best time to distribute manure in the growing season on a larger acreage when the conditions are right.
Wow. Well, neighborhood nutrient management plans is a great idea, Christine. Thanks for sharing it. And we will stay in touch and see where this might go.
Thanks, Bernard.